Hong Kong police on Sunday fired tear gas and charged at thousands of black-clad protesters who gathered to air their grievances for the 8th straight weekend. David Tweed reports on Bloomberg Daybreak, Australia.
I'm in Sai Ying Pun. It's a residential district in West Hong Kong. We were here last week because just along the road here, you can see what's known as the liaison office. This is the main representative office of Beijing here in Hong Kong. And last week, as it was last night, it was the focus of protests. But the other interesting thing that happened yesterday is that when the police were clearing the protesters from this area, up here you can see is a pedestrian street that leads all the way up into central Sai Ying Pun. And the police are using their tear gas. The tear gas actually wafted all the way up the streets into that residential area. Now, this all happened at the conclusion of an extremely chaotic 3 days of protest here in Hong Kong. It started on Friday at the airport. Thousands of protesters went out there to deliver their message to tourists, incoming tourists coming into Hong Kong. That was again repeated with violent protests out in Yuen Long. Yuen Long was the scene last week of where mobs of anti-protest men, some say linked to organised crime, beat up protesters in the trains going through the metro station there. Yesterday, the protesters, on Saturday, the protesters were back out there, this time targeting the police. Here right now, it's pretty much been cleaned up, and I just picked up this brick from the floor, or from the ground down underneath me. One thing that seems to be clear, these protests are becoming more splintered. Yesterday, the protest movement moved off, some of them to Causeway Bay, which is about 2 kilometres along here from where I'm standing. So the protest movement is becoming much more fragmented and much more difficult for the police to handle, difficult for the administration.
David, we're hearing reports also that the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office in Beijing going to give its views today. Now, that's going to be its first such public comment since the 1997 handover. How significant is that?
Well, it's extremely significant. This is going to be the thing to watch all day at 3 p.m. in Beijing. It's significant. As you say, it's the first time they've ever made any comments, and any comment that they do make could be interpreted as flouting that system of one country, two systems, which the protesters are protesting for. One of the things I suppose they could do is do what we hear often from the liaison office, and that's condemnation of the protest. That's complaints that the protests are hurting the feelings of the Chinese people. Although some are already begin to speculate that perhaps the Hong Kong and Macau's Affairs Office might come up with some sort of plan to remove the tensions. Perhaps they're going to say that they've agreed with the chief executive to completely withdraw the extradition bill. But who knows whether that's enough, in fact, to quell the unrest which is taking the city now for an 8th week.